Right, my name is Mike Saar. I'm from a company called Relewise. You've probably never even heard of us. We're Danish, but we use AI to generate uplift in conversion rates by 20+% for most of our clients. We are not going to be talking about us today. We're going to instead be four very well educated gentlemen in e-commerce. I'm actually going to do the least talking. So first of all, I'd like to introduce Dave Wiltshire. Dave is really an entrepreneur and has got some fantastic experience and knowledge. I'm going to introduce you to James. James is absolutely brilliant at explaining how to take technology into the store. And of course, Russ from Rusty Monkey, who is brilliant with the UI and development side. So our first question, and I will start with you, Russ, is what do you think merchants should think about with AI during 2025?
Yeah, so I think from the Rusty Monkey point of view, certainly the dev department, it's very much don't reinvent the wheel. So there's a lot of good tech that would do what you already need, and AI can just help you do more. And it's like the garnish at the moment, but it's getting better and better. So certainly keep an eye on it. But yeah, don't just throw everything away and just expect AI to do the job, because there's probably something already that you've actually got in place that will do it the best job, and AI is going to improve that.
Thank you. Dave. Sorry, we've got to work it back to me.
Yeah, I think for me, it's obviously about efficiency, saving time, giving a better experience. So, for example, we work with a brand called Castor who've got 40 stores. They're using the AI in Gorgeous to cut 40% of their customer support tickets, which is really impressive. And they're essentially asking us to give their AI more data from their ecosystem so they can get that to 60%. Which is amazing. Another real world example is we work with a company called Where for Retail who do agentic stock replenishment. So for a company like Steve Madden, who've got 250 stores, they use AI to automatically distribute their stock between stores, and they don't have to have any human interaction, which I think is a really interesting kind of use of AI and technology.
Coming from a technology provider that is really focused on in-store technology, what's really quite an interesting area for AI, I think, is around the area of product recommendations. And so if you can actually have a conversation kind of with a staff member, with a staff ambassador when you go into a particular store, whether that any type of fashion, and then you can use, by identifying them, you can then use then kind of product recommendations AI to actually then make that a really sort of personalised and quite an organic experience when you're actually in store. And I think that's where having the right in-store technology, I think, is so important to arm the staff members to be able to create that great customer experience.
Fantastic. Thank you. I think one of the things that I'm seeing when I talk to merchants on the topic of AI is a general lack of understanding of the different types of AI and the different waves of AI technology. Everybody at the moment is very familiar with generative AI because that's kind of a hot topic, but there's other types of AI, agentic, predictive, old-fashioned terms such as machine learning. All of these are forms of AI, and all of them can have very, very powerful use cases, but you need to understand what they deliver you and when. And I think if there's a takeaway for the audience, it's AI can really help. It's really emerging as a fantastic technology, but you need to know about the use case and you need to know, is it right for you? So those are the things that we just wanted to give you a sense of the flavor of different areas that can be impacted by AI. So my next question is going to go to Dave. And I think composable technology in e-commerce has been a bit of a theme for quite some time. And there's lots of discussion around it. There's the backlash, as Dave and I were just talking about. But there's, I think, a very simple issue, which is how do you glue things together and not end up with a huge bill if you're a merchant? Dave, to you.
Yeah, I think obviously the value of composable to the merchant is that they can interchange component parts from their tech stack. And I think actually now most technologies are API first and are letting their retailers, customers use their platforms as tools for their business, which I think is a stark change. And you can see a lot of the older technologies that used to keep their customers hostage. I think we all know a few of those are starting to kind of die out and be gone, which is really nice. You do see some horror stories in Composable where you get these big enterprise systems that never launch. I won't name any, but there are some that have a 20% launch rate and things like that, which can give the Composable market a bad name. But actually, I think a lot of technology now is very quick to deploy. And obviously, from a retailer's perspective, getting to market fast is the most important thing. So is it easy? Can we get to market fast? Can I have it configured to my business? And so obviously integration and making sure that you have the data flowing across your business is also really important. Try not to shamelessly plug what we do. But yeah, I think you've got to, if the tools are composable, but really what you want is to be composed, to have everything together as quickly as possible, which is where the joy is. And you need to make sure, if you do have multi-system environments, that everything is wired up really well. Otherwise, you have to live as a retailer with what I call low-level pain. So you set up these stacks really quickly. Not everything is perfectly in sync, and then you spend years of your life putting out fires and living with pain. So the key thing is to get it in and get it working smoothly quickly.
So I think one of the points that's really important is the composable journey isn't about ripping out your whole stack and reinventing a new one. It's actually about saying, where can I add the incremental benefit to my technology today, the investment I've already made? And products like Patchworks allow you to do that strategically and tactically combined together. And I think if you're a merchant and you're trying to figure out how am I going to get value from what I've already invested in, you just need to look at where are the weak points in my end-to-end process from a digital channel perspective, and then you can target those areas with the right appropriate technology. And that is the composable dream. But somehow it became what I call the macrolith, where there are certain merchants out there or software houses that will tell you that you need to buy everything from them and it's all composable. And it's like, hang on, that doesn't make sense. So just bear that in mind, and that there are wonderful technologies such as iPaaS that allow you to really do it in a composable way. So my next question actually is going to be for you, Russ. And that is about personalization. And we heard in one of the presentations this morning that only about 8% of merchants are really taking and making good use of personalization. But it's not just about personalization, it's also about the user experience and the flow through a website. What's your view?
So I think with a lot of the personalization, I think it's easy for people to take the point of view that it's all about selling more. It's all about let's increase our sales. And you'll see that a lot, don't you? Obviously, because we know that you've got to do the business case for new tech and everything. But the point of view that we take is it's about doing your best for the customer. And so you want to make the right recommendations, So an example from the other day, I was on a website and it was wall-mounted light fittings. And in the you might also like to buy, they had ceiling-mounted ones. But the search was specifically wall-mounted lights. And I felt like, it's not really, if you're looking for a wall mount, you're not going to look for probably ceiling. I don't think you're going to go, oh, I never thought of that. And I think it's little details like that that's really important if you're getting your personalization right. But the whole sort of viewpoint you should take is, I've got to do my best job for the customer here, really help them get what they want, rather than this sort of idea of just forcing people down a certain path because that's what looks better on a spreadsheet. But I think overall that's going to bring you better results if you just think of that customer. How can I do my best job for this customer? And again, it's not about hassling people and, just stuffing, emails full of irrelevant stuff, maybe just a few suggestions just to help them really. And also bear in mind, people's lives change, don't they? So, a good example that I didn't invent, obviously I've heard, but it was somebody orders like a pushchair for their baby or something like that. But then in 5 years' time, they're not going to be buying that anymore. They're going to be buying, I don't know, bikes or stuff like that. Not having any children, I wouldn't really know, but stuff. What did I used to have in the 80s? Skateboards, yeah, BMXs. So you want to sell them a BMX in 5 years' time, you see. And this is also something you've got to think of in the personalisation. People's, they're going to change. They're going to want different things. And, so it's important to make that right decision there and just give it some thought. But basically come back to that central, what's best for my customer. Try and, put yourself in their place. Don't just treat them like this sort of cash cow, as it were, and, selling them stuff that you've just got stuck in the warehouse. So that would be the main thing I'd sort of...
Cool.
That'd be my main takeaway.
So I think the topic of personalization is a really broad one. And I'm going to do a little shameless plug for my company because that's what we do. So if you want to see how AI can power personalization, Chris, please stand up at the back. Chris is going to be available today to do demonstrations if you want to see it. So we're upstairs near the bar, very, very strategic position so that you can get a drink and come and have a look. But please drop in. I think personalization used correctly can drive very good revenue. It can drive upsell, cross-sell. And I feel it's like a money turbocharger that you can add to your site and you can do it relatively quickly. So some of our clients implement in less than 24 hours. And yet they see, we're talking, say, in the payment side, you're happy if you get 2 or 3% or 5%. When we can generate you 25 to 50%. So guess where a quick win can be found. So I think personalization is a very much undersold but over-advertised piece of the market. And we can give you some views on that, but we're not going to talk about that any further. I actually now want to talk about a very interesting topic. I saw Sitoo's product demonstrated to me by one of James's staff. And I was blown away by it because what it is capable of doing is taking you from the digital world into the physical world, which is still where many merchants, particularly B2C, are making a lot of their revenues. And I think that transition from digital to the physical is really important. And it's actually a difficult area. So James, can you give us some thoughts about making that transition and what the key aspects of that are?
Yeah, so for those who don't know Sitoo, and please be aware that even the co-founders pronounce it differently. Sitoo, I think we heard earlier on. So it is a Swedish company. So it was born in Stockholm, and now if you go into a Westfield in Stockholm, it's the biggest mall in Scandinavia. 1 in 3 stores are running Sitoo from a fashion and lifestyle perspective. And Scandinavia, I think, is widely regarded as sort of innovators and thought leaders. And I think what they've done with the merge between a kind of digital and physical is it's no longer 2 channels anymore. It's thought of as one customer experience, regardless of the channel that they might be using. And I think because I've started at Sitoo January of last year, and I've been brainwashed by the mainstream media to say that physical retail's dying, it's dead, and that it was COVID. That means, everything's going to be online. When even today in 2024, I think the latest statistics, it's still 75 to 80% of a bricks and clicks kind of retailer's revenue still comes from the physical stores. And as our kind of quite kind of zany CEO often says, we are herd animals. I don't think the shopping experience is ever going to be completely non-physical. I think there's always going to be a place, and I think what is dying is bad retail, as evidenced by certain parts of Nottingham, I might add. That is what's dying, is rubbish retail. What isn't going to be going away, and you mentioned Castor, very famously a online only kind of retailer. I think at one point. Yeah. You've got Gymshark. They're now opening different stores. They opened their Gymshark store on Regent Street as a gimmick. It was just a showroom. It made so much bloody money. They've then hired a new director of retail and are putting stores all across the world. Physical retail is where it's at. And I do believe it's the merging of those channels into one experience, is where I feel that these retailers are going to be most successful.
Wonderful. And I think... absolutely, James is on point here, is you should see the physical store as an extension of the warehouse, an ability for you to actually enable customers to try things on. Sizing, as we know, when you do this whole email, e-delivery ping pong, because it's not quite the right size, you don't like the color, and you've got all those additional shipping costs going here, there, and everywhere. but you can go into a physical store, try it on, and if they don't have the color, immediately find some other store in that network that has it, and it's only 5 miles away or something, or actually we have that color, we'll deliver it to you, but you know it's going to fit because you've already tried it on. I think this is a very good blending of both digital and physical, and I think that's going to be a trend that continues, and I think they have a fantastic solution for that. I think one of the challenges for all of us in the room, and really the main topic of today's talk, is going to be, what should we do in 2025 as merchants that is kind of tactical to drive moving the needle quickly, but can then lend to a better growth strategy? And we know we're in a difficult trading world right now. It doesn't help that we've got, shall we say, a very creative leader in the US who's doing his damnedest to make life very complicated for us all. And then we've got kind of recessionary pressures across Europe. And, there's this general down-talking of the spending power in our pockets. So as a merchant, we have challenges. We've got to fight even harder for market share. So I want now to ask each member of the panel to give a more lengthy answer, because we've still got plenty of time, on what they think might be a hot topic for 2025. I'll start with you, Russ.
I'll speak very slowly. Yeah, I think what we're seeing in the agency, really, it's more about quick wins, not so much the big projects. It's more about what can we do in a short amount of time. We don't want to be waiting ages for stuff, and it's like more smaller projects get some improvement. It reminds me a lot of the British cycling team, how instead of, say, designing a brand new bike, they went for incremental changes in what they were doing. So they had those weird shaped helmets, didn't they? And they'd do just these tiny little changes on the bike, and then they totally smashed it and won. And that's what I think, really this year is going to be about. It's about us having a look at what we can change quickly, get a good win out of that, and go around and do that, really. And I think that's definitely what we're hearing more now. I mean, I think everyone should still keep an eye on, the long term. They might need to re-platform eventually. But again, maybe plan that in and do it as part of your sort of quick win strategy, as opposed to having to shift everything straight across and have the nightmare of moving all at once sort of thing. So yeah, I think that's definitely what we're seeing. And I'm sorry, I can't think of any more. So okay. We've got questions.
James.
I think for me, it's first-party data collection. I think is something which I believe to be a quick win, but also could have huge gains. And I think, speaking it selfishly from a technology provider for in-store loyalty, we heard earlier on around if you go to click out of a website, you're actually really encouraged to actually put in your email address, become a member, get a particular discount. I think in the online world, people are more used to providing their email addresses to access those. So therefore, I think in-store loyalty, I think, is a really interesting area of being able to gain more customer data at the point of purchase. Now, the problem for in-store retail is obviously if there's a queue out the door, they don't be asking anyone if they've got email addresses, or they don't be asking their details. And so therefore, I think ways in which you can use modern technology, and this is my turn for a shameless plug, actually, is even things like, and this is not new technology, but using the digital wallet to actually create and recognize customers when they're coming into store. That I think could be a game changer, because you're simply just tapping. And the really cool thing about this type of technology using the digital wallet too is if you do have a long queue. We work with a department store in Denmark. It's called Illum, and it's one of the biggest lottery department stores kind of in the country. And what they were finding was that people were members, and they were coming back 10 minutes after the purchase to say, I'm actually a VIP member, I should have 10% off. And so now they're having to go through the refund purchase journey, and that's all taking time and wasted effort and what have you, not least all the, having to, are they refunding and then they're doing it in the same transaction. This particular piece of technology that we've developed, actually, when you're actually tapping to pay, it will search for that loyalty card in the wallet automatically, and if there is one there, it will add it to the basket. And before the payment is then taken, oh, I see you're a member. Would you like your 10% off voucher? Yes, we can. So that type of thing. So increase the amount of first-party data that you are collecting. In Scandinavia, they have first-party data, known purchases, more than 80 to 90% for known purchases in store. I think in the UK, for Sitoo customers, the average is around 50%. 50% known purchases. There is a huge benefit. Think of all of the data that then comes in to the organization from previous purchases and more purchase data, which puts into solutions like yours for, to layer on to product recommendations or what have you. So I think those are the areas that I think is if I was in the merchant shoes, I would be focusing on.
Dave?
Okay, so I think I would focus, if I was a retailer, I would focus on consolidation. So my agency, Cogent 2, essentially looks for retailers that have put in a tech stack, normally with an ERP, have blown their budget and are essentially living with low-level pain because they've delivered what they thought they needed, and then they've got a multi-system environment, which is causing an enormous amount of work, excess cost, waste, poor customer experience, that kind of thing. So we essentially either talk them through how to sort that out, do it for them, or we implant someone in their business to help them solve those problems and essentially turn down the pain over time, which can take a few months. So I would strongly encourage retailers to focus on just doing what they're doing, but well. But there are obviously kind of emerging ways of increasing revenue, making things easier for yourselves. So there's post-purchase upsells is huge at the moment, so letting your customers buy things after purchase, so that's an emerging market. There are apps like order editing that are coming out that enable you to make more money and save money at the same time. And I think obviously rental and resale is also another area where retailers can start to change the way they monetize their products and do things a bit more environmentally friendly. So there's apps like Burl that let you return high value items to the retailer for a discount. They resell it and you get a cut of the margin, so you can start to monetize rental and resale and that kind of thing. So yeah, that's essentially what I do.
Thank you. I think from my perspective, quick wins really depend on what you do. One of the areas that I'm seeing a lot of potential in is there are quite a few B2C retailers who actually have almost hidden wholesale businesses, and they don't really address those very well. I sat down recently with a merchant who was telling me that they're using Shopify, they're using voucher codes in Shopify to identify their trade customers. And I'm like, well, why are you doing that? Well, we don't actually have any B2B flows in there. And then they miss the point that they don't actually track those different pricing levels they might be offering to their B2B clients. They don't track the different purchases that might come from those B2B clients. So we see a big emerging opportunity in B2B. And I find my company is really ahead of the curve there because we've built out all of that B2B functionality. And actually, on to James's point about the data, if you use AI smartly, you can start to tie up who's who, even when they come in anonymously. Because if you start to have data fragments and you've got very clever technology, you can start to map out entire journeys that could cross multiple devices, could be coming in from quite different websites even. So we have lots of multi-brand customers who can start to tie together single customers that go to different brand stores or even different country stores. It doesn't really matter. But once you have that data, you can actually use it to help that particular customer find the sorts of things they're really interested in. And if you do that well, guess what? They buy some more. There's also the concept of remarketing, and that's being able to easily, using email, using SMS, using WhatsApp, all these different channels, actually offer promotions. But one of the things that astonishes me, I shop on Amazon, I confess, I do it. But Amazon is always remarketing to me something I've just bought. And I'm sitting there going, how stupid are these guys? I mean, they're a brilliant business, but they do this badly. So, we've invented tech that doesn't do that. As soon as you buy something from that recommendation, it's removed. Even if you go back to an old email, that recommendation will no longer be there. So using tech like that to actually be relevant, make sure that you don't irritate your customer, because the more you irritate your customer, the less likely they are to buy, right? So I think there's a lot of opportunities out there to fine-tune your purchasing process, your user experience. And I spent myself over 10 years working on user experience, so it's a bit of a hobby horse. But when they land on the landing page, make sure they can find what they're looking for fast. If they're going to use a search, make sure that you have the search terms properly broadened, you've got spreading, you've got all that sort of stuff, so that even if they type or misspell something, they still get a hit. All of these things are relatively simple things to do, but if you don't do it right, you won't get a result. And we even offer like dynamic categories. So we see someone's interested in a specific area of your website, we will reorder the homepage with dynamic categories. So only the categories of our interest are bubbling up. So you're always keeping it top of mind. All of this is easy to do, but you need to have a strategy that's either tactical that says, I got to fix this, or you have a strategy that says, I want to improve long-term customer experience because that generates loyalty, that generates people coming back and buying again. And you also want to be sure that those customers leave the shopping experience feeling happy, because if they do, they're more likely to come back. If they leave your site thinking, oh God, that was hard to use, or it's really slow, or I got to the payment process and they want 7 pages of payment details, exactly as our first speaker said, it's not going to work. So just think about the user experience first. Think about how you could map that to an effective user journey, and that's probably going to help you boost sales. And then I think really leveraging that in-store experience. I mean, that is a stock warehouse. And now you've got distributed stock holding. Drive those folks to those individual stores where that stock exists, you're much more likely to get a sale. So I think the other point that you made, James, about identification, yeah, we can do it with tech now to make it so easy. Why on earth do we make it so hard? I'm fed up of going into certain stores and being asked for my email address. I know why they want it. I don't mind giving it to them, but they could have made it easier. Often I have a loyalty card. Why don't they scan the loyalty card? Duh. So hopefully this has been a little bit thought-provoking. I would like to thank everyone on the panel for their input. We're going to go to questions in a moment, but I also just like to thank Zoe, who at very short notice did a quick redesign on the graphics, because otherwise we would have had green faces, which wouldn't have looked so happy for the video and probably wouldn't have looked great for the audience. So it's now time for audience questions. Anyone got a question?
Firstly, guys, thank you. Really thought-provoking panel. My question is for James, right? You spoke a little bit about the kind of physical and digital customer journey merging. Let's use the buzzword phygital, right? Which
no! I'm not
going to say. I knew you'd get that reaction. I knew you'd get that reaction. Anyway, I'm going to own it. I'm going to use it, right? What can brands and retailers do better to help encompass that journey for consumers?
I think it comes down to helping the staff members in store. If we really think about merging online with store, it's about an action which usually, I would say, it's the two ways, right? So you can either make an online order while you're in store, or you can, when you've made an online order, is to somehow that to be surfaced while you're in the physical space. And I think what you see now when you go into many stores across the UK is when you see those huge PC screens where you barely can see the person behind with keyboards and what have you, that for them to actually to service like a normal click and collect. Everybody thinks click and collect is ubiquitous and it's really easy. It's not. It's absolutely not. What they're usually having to do is probably access another laptop or another application on another device. They're having to go through a whole different process to manage that click and collect sort of process. Now, with the right technology, you can just make that so much more easier, so much faster. And that then creates a really good customer experience for the person coming in to collect to collect their item, but also just makes it really easy for the staff member as well. And there's all sorts of different flows, like buy online, return in store. Buy online, return in store, you should be using a solution which returns that payment onto the original card, the original payment type, and it's a validated return. So they can't just walk into the next store with the same receipt. If you scan that receipt, it's already been validated. You can't return it twice, for example. You've also then got click and reserve. So you talked about click and reserve earlier on. You've seen something online. You think you want to buy it. You want to then go in and try the size. Being able to actually surface that click and reserve order, to have a task screen within the point of sale which says, we've got 4 click and reserves coming in today. It's for Mr. O'Hare or Mrs. O'Hare or whatever. And having that all in one application, one pane of glass, just makes that such a much easier kind of customer experience. Now, what I think we could see in the future is actually surfacing online carts, surfacing that in the store. So you might want to save that cart. And then when you actually identify yourself in store, that cart is then automatically brought up, and it will tell you whether that item is in stock kind of or not. And the other thing is the term that's used for making online orders when you're in store is called endless aisle. That's the term that has been used. And again, it's another one of those horrible buzzwords that everybody secretly hates. But I was in Sports Direct. Sorry to anybody here if you're from the Frasers group. I was in Sports Direct. I was buying my son some golf stuff. And somebody came in and they said, "Oh, have you got these in size 10? And the staff went, "Can you see them on there?" "No, there isn't any size 10. "Have you tried the website?" And the guy walked out. 90 quid, 95, probably £100 worth of orders gone. So surfacing that data of, okay, we haven't got a size 10 here in this store, but if you go down, I can order you one from the warehouse and we can have that delivered to your home, Mr. O'Hare. Or you say you were passing over to another store nearby, I can get them to pick it and pack it for you, and you can pick it up on your way through. How much more of a better customer experience, and merging the online and physical does that sound versus have you tried the website?
Next are very good at that, aren't they?
Yeah, and that's the thing. There's some brands that's made, again, I've come into this specific part of retail brand new, like from January of last year. There's certain stores that's made me feel like, oh, this is stuff. My wife said, she said, well, doesn't everybody do that? No.
Frasers groups still don't do refunds.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just a few minutes left. Are there any more questions?
You've just, as a user, you've just got me thinking about how drawn in and captured I've been by technology without even realising it. So, I went into a store and they said, "Oh, we'll send your receipt to your email address." So they didn't ask. I'm normally resistant to giving out my email address.
Yeah.
And I actually thought to myself, "Oh, what a good idea! I don't have to faff about with a bit of paper.
Yeah.
And if I want a refund, I've just got my phone and that's it." Another one, I sort of buy something, and as soon as I bought something, a few days later, I'm getting a 25% off. On something else, and I'm straight back on the website again, like you, because I'm thinking, I've got 25% off, and it's just making me reflect how unconsciously I've sort of been drawn in, but it's an easy experience to have as a user.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, thank you.
I think the reward element is really important. So if you go and make that transaction and they can identify you, then remarketing back to that buyer actually elevates their experience. Because if they think, oh, next time you come, and you don't heavily time limit it, you can have 10% on us because you bought from us, means that you will be more likely to be loyal. And I think people need to think about loyalty as a long-term program, not something that they're going to drive in 30 days. And that's a mistake a lot of retailers make, is, they give you a voucher, but it expires in seconds. And you think, well, that was useless. Why did you bother? So simple strategies like that, if you just think about, well, the next time they come in, if they buy something else, that's an upsell we generated from their first purchase. And so think about that user journey, even into the world of the physical, because, yeah, we can help. I think we're bang on time.
All right, amazing. Well done. Thank you so amazing panel.